Hello everybody, how are we all doing? My name is Trevon from freestudiotime.com, and today we're going to be going over the Kaotica eyeball, the popular Kaotica eyeball. Now, this thing is so popular because they say it helps you get professional sound quality from your recordings without recording in an actual studio booth, right? Another reason why these things have become so popular is because a lot of people are recording at home nowadays and not going to a studio to record a song. Just because of all the equipment that we have available now, it's a lot easier to just record at home and less expensive to record at home versus going to an actual studio and paying for studio time, right? But what I'm gonna talk about in this video today is why you should not use a Kaotica eyeball. And there's only a very rare amount of times where you will actually need the Kaotica eyeball, but in 99% of situations, you will not need to use the Kaotica eyeball. And here in this video, we're just gonna go over a little bit of the reasons why. I'm gonna show you some examples of songs that I use with the Kaotica eyeball and without the Kaotica eyeball, just to kind of give you a way to dichotomize what you're hearing and just, help you really grasp the understanding of what this Kaotica eyeball is doing to your vocals, right? So without any further ado, let's just hop into FL Studio and let's get this stuff rolling, man. So the Kaotica eyeball, it's really useful in some situations, but in others, you're just best off not using it at all. In this video, we're going to explain the exact reasons why and also when you should use the Kaotica eyeball. So currently, I've been using the Kaotica eyeball for about 2 years now. In the past, the Kaotica eyeball served me very well. So in the past, I used to record in a room that just wasn't sound treated at all. There was a lot of echoes, a lot of reflections, and using the Kaotica eyeball to record in that room helped me out tremendously. And you may be wondering, why didn't I just record in another room? Well, in the past, I didn't really have the option to record in any other room except for this specific room. So buying a Kaotica eyeball really saved my ass because that foam piece really blocked off a lot of the echoes and reflections coming back into the microphone, right? But now since I've moved away from that area and I've started recording in a different area that's a little bit better sound treated, recording with the Kaotica eyeball is turning out to be a really big hassle. Main reason why is just because it adds a lot of low mid frequencies and it kind of takes a bit away from your presence as well. In the past, I used to kind of think this problem could be fixed with EQ, but I was drastically mistaken. To give you a little example of what I'm talking about, I'm gonna play you a song from like almost 3 years ago when I was using just the microphone without the Kaotica eyeball. And on top of that, I want you to also think that my mixing was a lot worse back then, but what I want you to listen for out of these vocals is just the presence. I want you to listen to how much presence was in the vocals and just think, I didn't have to really try as hard in the past to get presence just because it wasn't really a big issue. I'm experiencing a lot of issues with presence more recently because I just realized that the Kaotica eyeball is causing majority of those problems. So what I'm going to do is play an old song from a few years ago before I was really good at mixing and before I started using the Kaotica eyeball, and then I'm going to play you a song that is really good mix, but it's after I started using the Kaotica eyeball, right? So let's roll the clip.
It's hurt your face. I just wanna know how you got to this place. Throwing out the self you were taught to embrace. Don't forget the love that I begged you to chase. Baby, come inside, let me caress your waist. If I let you go, then our time was a waste. Baby, come pull up, give our minds all a break. I just wanna know how you got to this place, how you got to this place. Sometimes I get carried away. Maybe it's shine. Safety, I always value your safety. Safety, I always value your safety. No, you never meant to cause harm. All you ever try to do is save me. Your empathy, good electrons, and passed on. No, it ain't your, no, it ain't your fault. No, it ain't your, no, it ain't your fault. Oh, you never meant, oh, you never ever try to do, ever try to empathy, passed on.
So as you just heard, it's very, very interesting. Now, when I first bought the Kaotica eyeball, I thought that it was a complete game changer. I thought I was gonna get like studio quality sound treatment with just 200 bucks, but I was just drastically mistaken, because in reality, using a Kaotica eyeball when recording vocals almost makes your recording sound like you're speaking through a tube. To give you a better example, when I was talking about that story in the past where I was recording in that room and I was getting a lot of reflections from that room coming into the microphone, and then I realized I needed to use the Kaotica eyeball because using a Kaotica eyeball will block off all those reflections coming into the microphone, right? So what the Kaotica eyeball is actually like a lot smaller version of that room. Now, obviously, I'm not getting any of those crazy reflections, but as far as like the low mid presence and stuff like that, it's all just coming back into the microphone. And since the Kaotica eyeball is made of styrofoam, you're not really getting any crazy reflections, but you're still getting a lot of funky low mid frequencies that are just coming into the microphone, and it's just pretty much destroying your recording. There is a lot of things that you can do to drastically minimize this problem in your recordings, but it's like, why would you want to go through all that extra if you don't have to? My personal suggestion is, if you're in a really bad like sound treated room, it doesn't have any sound treatment at all, and you don't have any other option to record anywhere else, I would definitely suggest you use a Kaotica eyeball, because I mean, something is going to sound better than nothing, right? But if you're in any other type of room, like if you have carpet in the room that you're recording in, do not use a Kaotica eyeball. That's literally just like the bare minimum. If you have carpet in the room you're recording in, don't use a Kaotica eyeball. It'll be a lot better if you just use pillows and blankets to wrap around the microphone, just to give your whole booth some type of sound treatment, because using a Kaotica eyeball would just give you a lot more trouble when it comes to fixing up and mixing your song. Now, especially if you're just a beginner. If you're a beginner trying to use a Kaotica eyeball, you're gonna have horrible sounding songs. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So if you're a beginner, do not get a Kaotica eyeball, despite what all these other people may tell you. So what I'm gonna do is actually show you everything it takes for me to get a song to sound clear using a Kaotica eyeball. When I talk about clear, I'm talking about that presence, and just like you don't really hear too much low mids, because that's one of the main issues that I've been experiencing, is that I have a lot of low mids, specifically around that 440 hertz frequency. It's really, really, really bad right there. And it's like, it doesn't matter if I use dynamic EQ and attenuation mode. If you don't know what dynamic EQ is, it's a type of EQ that detects certain frequencies and allows you to attenuate those frequencies down as the EQ detects them, or it allows you to actually boost the gain up of that frequency as the EQ detects it. Kind of gives you a greater sense of control when it comes to using EQ. But even if I was to use two dynamic EQs compressing that same 440 hertz frequency, it'll still sound like it's a little something that I can't really grasp. It's like a level of presence that I can't necessarily grasp. So I want to show you what I'm talking about and like what I have to do in order to get close to the presence that I want to, because I was able to get to the presence that I wanted in the past when I wasn't using this Kaotica eyeball. I want you to keep that in mind, and I'm a whole lot better of a mix engineer now. But anyways, let me show you. So I'm about to let you listen to this song a little bit, hear how it sounds like, then I'm going to show you all I had to do for the EQ to get it to sound like that. And I want you to keep in mind that when you listen to this song, just notice that it doesn't sound like professional presence. It doesn't sound like I'm achieving that professional presence, like that clean, super crisp sound. And I can tell you right now, if I didn't have that Kaotica eyeball and if I did this exact same thing, it would sound a whole lot better, because I would have to like let off a little bit on the EQ. I used a lot of EQ in order to get this song to sound the way I want it to sound like. But anyways, let me roll it.
Safety, I always value your safety. Safety, I always value your safety. No, you never meant to cause harm. All you ever try to do is save me. Your empathy, good like Jones, I'm past all that lately. And no, it ain't your fault. No, it ain't your fault. No, it ain't your fault.
So let's check out this EQ a little bit, shall we? So currently in my mixes using the Kaotica eyeball, I have to do a lot more in my mixes in order to get presence that I would not have to work that hard for if I was not using the Kaotica eyeball, right? So let's go first step. This is what I normally do. I add this first EQ to kind of take control of the sounds, my raw sounds from my vocal, right? This EQ is like the first thing in the vocal chain. It's the first thing that's going to be processing these vocals, so it's best to like come in here on this vocal bus with a nice foundational EQ to kind of set the frequencies and make sure none of these other frequencies, none of these problem frequencies are getting amplified and just making our mix sound worse, right? I normally have to dip out this 440 hertz frequency, just like how I said earlier, it's my problem frequency, and I boosted it up by a little bit right here to add a little bit of presence. Then I boosted up the high end by a very little bit too. Then what I actually did on this mix right here, this is my second EQ. This is the EQ that I use after my compression. If you've been following this channel, I use EQ after compression mainly just because normally after compression you start to get a little bit more problem frequencies that are amplified, so it's nice to come over here with the EQ and get those problem frequencies back under control. Now what I had to do right here, I had to take out the low end and then I had to boost up the high mids. The main reason why I did it like this is just because you see some people, they use a bunch of different types of EQ cuts and stuff like that. They may boost one band really high up and they may boost it by like 3 decibels or something. They may cut one band by like, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7, I don't know, however many decibels. But the thing about using EQ is the wider the boost or the wider the cut, the more natural it sounds. And I know everybody says that you should always cut narrow with your EQ, but the narrower you adjust an EQ, the more unnatural it'll sound and it'll just make your vocal sound weird. So try your best to make your vocal sound as clear as possible. Sometimes the technicalities can kind of take over what people are actually hearing, which is what matters majority, like most over anything, right? So I just keep that in mind. But that's why I did my whole boosting cuts like this. But I had to cut out this low mid frequency right here, this 480 frequency, and I have it boosted up. But I want you to pay attention that it still is not enough. And the thing about it is, like, the more you cut a frequency, the more it affects other frequencies in the frequency spectrum, right? So you have to be very cognizant of how you use EQ. This is why you don't want to make too big of adjustments in EQ, and it's why problems with the low mids using a Kaotica eyeball is so hard to fix. Using a Kaotica eyeball is like one of the main reasons why I even need to use a second EQ, because I don't want to control all my frequencies from one EQ and just make everything sound super weird. So you kind of have to divide up the work. It's kind of like the idea of using a dual compressor in a sense. So I boosted up this high mid frequency right here, and I boosted up my high end by a very little bit as well. So after my EQ, I came over with a bit of upward processing. So what this is pretty much just like upward compression. Now normally with compression, you're attenuating your vocals or you're attenuating whatever you're working on, and it's pretty much pushing sounds down, right? And with upward processing, what's happening is you're actually adding a little bit to what you lost during compression, right? So what the end result is actually allowing you to add a little bit more of the dynamics and a little bit more of the feel into your vocals, creating a more professional sound. All right, this is why using upward processing is so useful. But the reason why I wanted to tell you all this is just because even after I used this, I wasn't able to get the presence that I really needed out of it. Right now, last things that I use to get presence is really my saturation, which I have right here in my auto-tune EFX turned up 13% in the mix. And second is an exciter. In this case, I'm just using fresh air. I'm using the fresh air exciter. And of course, I'm adding a little bit more harmonic distortion to the high mids as opposed to the high end, just a very little bit to the high end and a decent amount in the high mids, just because my high mids is where the majority of my presence frequencies are. So it only makes more sense to add more in those frequencies, right? But normally I pretty much just use an exciter to give my vocals that pop and that excitation, as you can say, that I needed. And pretty much I'm still not getting the sound that I really feel like I need. It sounds more like artificial presence, if that makes sense. Now, saturation and exciters are really meant to complement the presence that you already have from your vocals. But if you're drastically lacking on presence in your song and you're trying to make up for that lack of presence with an exciter, that's where things are going to start sounding really weird. Well, not necessarily really weird, because if you use it in moderation, it won't sound bad, but it won't sound natural. It won't really sound as good as it can sound like without using a Kaotica eyeball. So keep that in mind. And also, if you're wondering what type of mic I use the Rode NT1. It's not the best microphone, but it's also definitely not the worst. I definitely shouldn't be getting super muffly, super funky sounds from this microphone. It's definitely the Kaotica eyeball, and I noticed that because I was recording with the exact same microphone in the past, and I didn't start to experience this problem until I started using the Kaotica eyeball, right? So conclusion, Kaotica eyeball is a last of the last resort. You should only be using something like a Kaotica eyeball if you're forced to record in an environment that has absolutely no sound treatment and a lot of reflections, right? Which is honestly a very rare scenario. But if you're able to record in a room that has any type of carpet in it, or you're able to just somehow put pillows and blankets around your recording station or wherever you're recording it, you're going to be totally fine. You're going to be able to get a lot better of a sound not using a Kaotica eyeball versus using it. So do not fall for the hype. Take this from someone that already spent $200 on the Kaotica eyeball. Do not buy it if you're in any of those situations that I just mentioned on the better side, not using Kaotica eyeball, right? So yeah, recording artists, I'm now speaking directly to you. If you are struggling to get a professional mix and master, or if you don't know how to mix and master at all and you're actually paying people right now to mix your songs for you, I have the perfect opportunity for you to literally get a pro mix and master yourself in under 60 days. Very quickly, I want you to actually work with me because I love working with people that are as passionate about music as I am. So if you're interested in working with me and getting your music to actually sound professional, hit the link down below so we can get on a call and talk more about your personal journey and getting you to where you need to be, right? But anyways, everyone, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video. If you did, make sure to hit like, make sure to hit subscribe. I'll catch you all in the next one.